We are officially 2 weeks away from the beginning of the regular season, and that means it is time for one final mock draft for this fantasy football season. Welcome into the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. My name is Tyler Plath. I am not the usual host. I'm filling in for Lucas because Lucas is missing in action today. But don't worry, Lucas. We'll hold down the fort for you. And I am joined with some serious firepower today. I am joined with my esteemed colleague, as we like to refer to each other as, the one and only Christian Watson, Brees Hall hating, Aaron Jones, Jahmyr Gibbs loving, Gerald Everett Stan. It's my buddy Cameron Lawrence. Cam, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a crazy week. We're recording on a Saturday. It's just absolutely nuts. We've got travel plans up the wazoo for all of us. And of course, it all happens right before the season starts. But we're here for an amazing mock draft. Like Tyler said, Lucas is gone today on Saturday when we record. It's his birthday, so happy birthday, Lucas! Woo!
Shout out, yeah.
But that just means that we have to trash you the entire weekend and
Yes.
throw shots at you.
Yep.
So that is what we'll do. Me and Ty, like he said, we are not the normal hosts, so we're going to kind of throw it back and forth to each other and try and figure this thing out because we are lost without our leader. With that being said, I don't think we should waste any more time, Ty, and I think we should just jump right in. You good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
After that fancy camera work that Lucas always talks about, we are ready for our mock draft today. 12-man PPR, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 2 flex draft. I am picking from the 104. Tyler's all the way back at the 111. We didn't want to be too close to each other because we didn't want to be frustrated by the end of this draft because we're sniping each other so much. So this is what we do. I'm going to hit start, Ty, and we'll jump right in. Hopefully I get a gift here to begin. And you know what? I did. The first 3 guys off the board go Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Travis Kelce. And for me, this one is pretty easy. For me here, it's Christian McCaffrey. He is my second best player on my big board, just behind Justin Jefferson. So it is a smash pick. I would have taken him at the 102, 103, and obviously I'm going to take him here at the 104. Only other guy I'm thinking about it all here is Cooper Kupp, and that's just because he also has a ridiculous type ceiling. But I'm going to lean Christian McCaffrey here.
So just the James White of fantasy football. I'm kidding. Totally kidding. I'm totally kidding.
After McCaffrey, you're ridiculous. After McCaffrey goes Bijan Robinson, Tyreek Hill, Austin Eckler, CeeDee Lamb, Cooper Kupp, and Stephon Diggs. Ty, you talked about earlier that you have a specific way you want to go, and I think this might have worked out pretty well for you.
Yeah, so I'm going. I look at the board. Saquon Barkley is right there, and he is worth a first round draft pick. But my running back that I'm actually going to go with here is Nick Chubb, because I think Nick Chubb has a better chance of finishing as the running back 1 overall over Saquon. Both are in fairly similar situations in the sense that they are the lone back in their backfield. They're going to get a ton of work, a ton of volume. But like I said, I think Nick Chubb, you avoid the injury risk that Saquon will always and forever have, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and say Saquon's going to get hurt again, but I really don't want to take a health risk with my first round pick like Saquon. So that's why I'm going Nick Chubb first. After Nick Chubb went Saquon Barkley and Devontae Adams. And with this next pick, AJ Brown is right there. And that's actually very, very intriguing because I'm a big fan of AJ Brown, but there is one player that I'm an even bigger fan of, and he's a little bit down the board, but it's Tony Pollard. And we've done mock drafts in the past where Pollard has been a late second and heck, even a mid second. I'm here to tell you that Tony Pollard is well worth an early second. In our podcast episode with Andrew Erickson of Fantasy Pros, he even said he's worth the late first round draft capital. So going double hero running back, and I'm not touching that until at least the 7th round, but getting 2 guys that I believe have running back 1 overall upside, I am in love with the start that I have.
For sure. And then after Tony Pollard for you goes Patrick Mahomes, AJ Brown falls back to the 204, Derrick Henry, Josh Allen, Jonathan Taylor, and unfortunately Amon-Ra goes next. He was for me kind of who I was hoping would be there for me. And obviously he doesn't. When I look at the second round, most of the time I prefer to go a running back wide receiver in the first 2 rounds. It just allows me then coming back to kind of go whatever direction I want. For me, that's a bigger factor for me actually later towards where you are, Ty. I like that, but that's because I love running backs in that 3-4 round range. And so I want to be able to have that flexibility. However, here I look at the board, I see Garrett Wilson, Josh Jacobs, Jalen Waddle, Jalen Hurts, Mark Andrews, Chris Olave, Ramondre Stevenson, T. Higgins, Devonta Smith. And for me, it's between the first 2 guys I listed, Garrett Wilson and Josh Jacobs. I think I have Josh Jacobs rate higher. However, I think it's getting late enough now where it's getting hard to ignore everything going on with the contract situation with Josh Jacobs. If I'm picking in the second round, even if I think he's going to be great, I just don't want that problem, right? I don't want to have week 1 come and all of a sudden my second round pick, a guy I'm fully relying on, is just not even there. So I'm going to lean Garrett Wilson. I haven't been taking him this early usually. However, I still think he's got crazy upside. We saw how talented he was last year with Zach Wilson and Mike White and Joe Flacco. So I think he's going to be really good this year with Aaron Rodgers. So I'm going to take Garrett Wilson. After Wilson goes Jalen Hurts, Mark Andrews, Josh Jacobs, Chris Olave, Jalen Waddle, and Ramondre Stevenson. And I'm going to be honest, I could not be happier. And the reason I couldn't be happier is because there's one guy I wanted here. Actually, there's 2 guys I wanted here. Now I have to make the decision. And it comes down to between Devonta Smith and Jahmyr Gibbs. I've talked about Jahmyr Gibbs a ton, right? Nonstop. And I really like Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's worth the pick here. I also think Devonta Smith is worth the pick here. I think Devonta Smith possesses some upside. So it really comes down to, Ty, what direction should I go? And before I make my pick, I actually want to ask you, okay, you're sitting here. And we won't use those 2 names just because I want to. If you have a running back and wide receiver, you like the same here. What direction are you typically going if you have a 1 running back, 1 wide receiver already?
I honestly would look running. Well, I would honestly look running back because I think there's enough value and there's not enough let me say it this way. There's a teardrop in running backs after this point. So I'm a big fan of going running back then and really, getting those spots solidified on my roster. But I don't think you can go wrong with a Devontae Smith, heck, even DK Metcalf. I don't think you can go wrong with a receiver in this spot. So it's a hard, I don't think it's a pick that you can necessarily miss up unless you go with a Breece Hall, right, with his situation and stuff, and it doesn't pan out. But if we're going back to your predicament, right, where you're deciding between Devontae Smith and Jahmyr Gibbs, I like Jahmyr Gibbs probably better, just again with teardrop, but you can't go wrong with either of those 2 guys.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at as well. I think I'm going to lean Jahmyr Gibbs here. Obviously, in a full PPR, he has a much better value than he is in a half PPR because this year you are relying on that receiving work. And so I do like him here. I got 2 high receiving volume running backs and Garrett Wilson. After Jahmyr Gibbs goes T. Higgins, Devonta Smith, Deebo Samuel, Travis Etienne, Joe Burrow, and Calvin Ridley. And Ty, you are on the clock with 2 running backs picked already. Where are you going to go from here?
I'm going to go DK Metcalf because he fell to me. I like the touchdown upside that he has, and I don't. And the Seahawks wide receiver room is a funny situation because everyone is cheapening the price of Tyler Lockett because of JSN. But I still think DK Metcalf is still kind of the alpha in that wide receiver room. And I will gladly take that on my team in the late 3rd. And then after DK, when Najee and Kenneth Walker, so then I kind of have my pick of wide receivers again between Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper. I like both of them pretty much as equals. Breece Hall is there, and that's a very intriguing option.
Any thoughts on taking Lamar Jackson here?
Not necessarily. If I had if I had Mark Andrews, then it most definitely would be an interesting. Then I would probably go Lamar Jackson, but I don't think I need to force a quarterback pick at this point. So because of that, I'm not going to go Lamar Jackson. I am going to go Keenan Allen here. I don't mind Amari Cooper, but just with Nick Chubb, I don't want to get too many Browns players. So I'll go Keenan Allen, wide receiver one for the Chargers, and that's a fairly straightforward pick in my opinion.
For sure. After Keenan Allen with Breece Hall, George Kittle, Justin Fields, Amari Cooper, Lamar Jackson, Joe Mixon. And of course, this is, why we continue to mock draft over and over. I said, you know what? We talked about going running back earlier, and the top guy on the board is a guy that I love, and that is Aaron Jones. So I do think maybe, the way the board fell, obviously it's hard to predict. Aaron Jones fell a little bit. For my team build, I probably would have rather gotten Devonta Smith, had a more full, filled out team. However, I still am going to take Aaron Jones here. He is, to me, the best player on the board. And so I'm going to commit to him here. After him goes Terry McLaurin, Justin Herbert, TJ Hawkinson, Damian Pierce, J.K. Dobbins, and Miles Sanders. And I cannot be more happy because then I do get the wide receiver that I want, and that is Jerry Jeudy. We've talked a ton about Jerry Jeudy. If you watch any of our content, all we've done is praise Jerry Jeudy this season, especially from Lucas. He has been all over Jerry Jeudy. Andrew Erickson was on Jerry Jeudy last year and just talked about the fact he had that stretch at the end of the year that he did where he was wide receiver 6. He shouldn't be going in the 5th round right now. He should be going ahead of guys like Terry McLaurin, who hasn't shown an upside like that. He should be going in the range of a DK, closer to like a DK Metcalf, who was the wide receiver 16 overall. So I like the upside there. I got 2 younger wide receivers who I can trust. After Jerry Jeudy goes Trevor Lawrence, Drake London, DJ Moore, Alvin Kamara, DeAndre Hopkins, Alexander Madison. Ty, you've got an extremely balanced team right now. So are you looking best player available, or do you have a certain direction you want to go?
There's not necessarily a direction that I'm wanting to go here, but Christian Watson is at the top of the board, and I'm going to go with him, get another receiver. Look, Christian Watson is not the most attractive, asset to have this year, but there's something to be said for the wide receiver 1 on the Green Bay Packers. So it's an ugly volume kind of thing. There's no way that we see a repeat in the efficiency that we saw in touchdowns last year, but again, I'm not in a spot where I am super dependent on Christian Watson for production. Like I've got DK Metcalf, I've got Keenan Allen. So getting Christian Watson pretty much as a flex option is, I think, an okay spot to be in with Watson. James Conner, so that makes it 4 running backs for Team 12. So that bot is having some
fun over there.
He's risking it for the biscuit. So James Conner and then Dallas Goedert, and I'm kind of pissed because Dallas Goedert would have been my guy here because Dallas Goedert is my target at tight end this year because the guy is super involved in his offense. He was the tight end 5 in fantasy points per game last year when it comes to the tight ends, but I am still looking tight end. Kyle Pitts is still on the board, but I am actually going to go with Darren Waller here. We are conveniently recording this episode the day after the Giants just played the Panthers in the preseason, and the starters all played at least one series. Like Daniel Jones played one series, and I don't remember Darren Waller off the top of my head, but Darren Waller was used as a wide receiver in that offense, and he was hyper targeted by Daniel Jones because everyone's so paying attention to the receivers that Darren Waller was open over the middle of the field a ton. So, and the other thing too, I should say this, that's probably more exciting than just targets. They were standing him up on the outside in, 11 personnel, again, 1 running back, 1 tight end. They would throw all the receivers on one side of the field and then put Darren Waller on an island. Forcing a corner to guard the size of Darren Waller is a nightmare for defenses. So getting that as my tight end, I really, really like Darren Waller in the 6th.
Yeah, I do just want to add on those 2 picks that you just made. I agree. I don't think people quite remember how dominant Darren Waller was 2 years ago when he was less healthy, right? I mean, he was challenging Travis Kelce as the overall tight end one. And then obviously had injuries, but the dude's fast. The dude is a mismatch all over the field. And if they're not going to use him strictly at the tight end position, that just should make you happier because you want him moved around the field. You want him catching the ball. And Christian Watson, obviously, I have him very far down my draft board. But where you took him, where he's going in redraft compared to best ball, best ball he's getting sometimes the end of the third, early fourth round. I mean, the ADP for me is ridiculous here. But if you're taking him as your wide receiver 3, if you've got, like you do, 4 solid players, I think that's an okay shot. I still wouldn't do it, but I think it's a good shot there because then it's purely upside. Because maybe he does. He's the exception to the rule. The efficiency sticks. It's absolutely ridiculous, right? He does have that, athletic profile where he could make it happen. Then you got a league winner on your hands. Right. So I understand that there. After Darren Waller went Chris Godwin, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, Kyle Pitts, Tyler Lockett, and Mike Williams. Here, I'm looking at wide receiver. Darren Waller is the only tight end I would have taken. Trevor Lawrence was the only quarterback I would have taken. Trevor Lawrence obviously went a full round ahead of this. So right now I'm looking at it. Brandon Ayuk, Marquise Brown, Christian Watson are the 3 guys that I'm looking at right now. I like Ayuk, but I actually have Christian Watson as my highest ranked wide receiver. So I am going to go him here. And my thing on Christian Kirk, is I really love this Jaguars offense. I think they're going to be really, really good this year. So me taking Christian Kirk here again is a bet on the fact that I think this Jaguars offense is going to be better than the San Francisco offense. And I also think Kirk is higher up on the totem pole of, where targets are going to go than Ayuk is in his offense, just because Ayuk's got so many really good mouths to feed. Kirk, obviously, they have a lot of mouths to feed, but not the same quality.
Mm-hmm.
After Christian Kirk went Brandon Ayuk, George Pickens, Michael Pittman, Isaiah Pacheco, Dalvin Cook, Rashad White, which luckily enough for me leaves 3 guys now that I can make a decision again for Marquise Brown, who I mentioned earlier, Deontay Johnson, who I've been all over this whole offseason, and Jordan Addison. I am looking at my wide receivers. I do trust them, Garrett Wilson and Jerry Jeudy, but I don't think they're quite as safe as, having a Stephon Diggs and a Calvin Ridley or a Tyreek Hill or Devonta Smith like some of these other teams do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Deontay Johnson here and just rely on the PPR upside that he's going to bring, right? He's going to get an insane amount of targets. And so just to continue bring stability to my lineup, give me 3 running backs, 4 wide receivers. After Deontay goes Mike Evans, David Montgomery, James Cook, Evan Ingram, Javonte Williams. Oh, Marquise Brown almost made it all the way back to Utah. So what are you thinking now? Because you've continued to build a very balanced team. So where do you go from here?
I was hoping for running back, and literally the 3 that I was looking at, Montgomery, Cook, and Javonte Williams, all went before this pick. So I will still be looking running back. I'm going to play the board because the team after me literally has 4 running backs, so they will not be taking a running back. So at this point, I'm going to go receiver, and it comes down to 2 players for me. Yes, JSN is there. I have DK Metcalf. I don't really want those 2 fighting against each other on my team. Jahan Dotson is there. I'm a big fan of Jahan Dotson this year, but there is Jordan Addison, and I have my questions when it comes to Jordan Addison and the role, the volume that he gets, but there is enough for him to have a role. And if he does step up and become the number 2 option in that Vikings offense for a 7th round pick in your fantasy drafts, that could be an ultimate steal. So I will go Jordan Addison with my first pick here in the 7th, and followed and JSN and Dak Prescott followed that up. So now back on the clock again, I'm going to go running back, right? I just need to get some depth at this point. And AJ Dillon is right there. I don't mind AJ Dillon for an 8th round pick. Look, he's going to get early down. He's going to get goal line work, and that's been the trend the last couple of years, is that he gets when they get closer to the goal line, it becomes AJ Dillon territory. So I'm not in a spot either where I am needing AJ Dillon to be this world beater or to, punch above his weight, but I don't mind the RB3 role that I have him now as on my team.
For sure. I was a little surprised that you weren't considering quarterback there. Is that you just already have a plan in mind of where you want to go quarterback later? Is that why, or what was the thought process there?
So I will spoil my quarterback because I'm going to have to reach on him in order to not get sniped. I'm going to go Daniel Jones. Like I've got Daniel Jones as a top 10 quarterback. I've got Darren Waller, so I get a stack with it. But there's a good chance that I may go two quarterbacks with my next 2 picks because I don't think you can solely rely on Daniel Jones as like your one and only quarterback in fantasy this year.
For sure. And that's where I figured you were going to, especially after talking about Daniel Jones as a league winner in our last episode. But for me, I was looking at the board and I saw every team between us had a quarterback already. The guy I wanted to draft, who I didn't think was going to make it back to me, was still on the board. That's Deshaun Watson. But before that, we had Jahan Dotson, Brandon Cooks, Treylon Burks, Kadarius Toney, Antonio Gibson, and Pat Freiermuth go. And like I said, right here, it for me is an easy pick of Deshaun Watson. He is one of the best, quarterbacks who you can get late. I shouldn't say one of the best. He has one of the highest ceilings out of any quarterback you can get late, right? Before everything happened, he was a top 5 quarterback 3 years in a row. And so does he repeat that? Maybe not, but the fact that he is running as much as he is, the fact that he has as many weapons around him, I do like him as a good bet in the end of the 8th round. And before I get to my 9th round, we are going to take a quick break and hear from our friends over at Underdog.
Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100.
And we're back. I just had to show Lucas how it's actually done. He has all these weak ands and last time we had Andrew Erickson on, he barely even did it. And I was just like, come on, dude. So
come on,
Lucas, when you watch, that's how you do it. That's how you come back from a commercial break. We left off at me taking Deshaun Watson. After Deshaun Watson went Quentin Johnston, Brian Robinson, Tua Tagovailoa, Michael Thomas, Zay Flowers, JSN fell all the way back to the 9th round, which is crazy to me. Or no, that's Juju Smith.
Yeah, I was gonna say JSN.
I can't. I just read Jay Smith and I went, oh wow, he fell. Nope, Juju Smith-Schuster makes so much more sense there. Sorry about that. JSN went all the way up in the 7th round where he should go. So now I am on the clock, and I'm gonna be honest, Ty. We just did a commercial break. I took a little break. Have been kind of talking and trying to figure out where I want to go, and I have no idea what I want to do here. I could go David Njoku and take the stack at tight end. However, I am not quite as high on David Njoku, just because, and this goes back to what you talked about, actually, Ty, on our earlier podcast when we talked about the Browns, is do I think the Browns are Super Bowl favorites? No, I don't. Do I think they have a ton of weapons who are all going to do pretty well? Yes, I do. So who's kind of going to be one of the more odd men out? And I think David Njoku is going to have to take a little step back from what we're predicting. If Nick Chubb's going to be really good, if Amari Cooper's going to be good, if Elijah Moore's going to have a slight resurgence. I just don't think that they're all can be fantastic. And David Njoku's, for me, the guy that takes a little bit of a step back. I think he's going to still have some great games. And for me, I just like tight ends. I like a couple tight ends later. Talked about, Tyler Higbee a lot. He's one that I really like later on. So what I'm considering right here is Gabe Davis Rashad Penny, Zach Charbonnet. Khalil Herbert is on my radar. We talked about him a little bit earlier that I'm not in love with him. But I think who I'm going to go with here is actually the backup running back for the Seattle Seahawks, and Zach Charbonnet. The fact for me right now that Kenneth Walker is dealing with a groin injury, the fact that they took him in the Charbonnet in the second round again, I think he's going to factor into this offense. Maybe not right away, and I don't need him right away with the 3 running backs that I have, but I do think he's going to factor in. I have him as a top 24 running back this season, so I do think he's going to be involved. And so getting him here, I'm very happy about. After Charbonnet goes Gabe Davis, David Njoku, Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Dalton Schultz. Oh, I am struggling now with names. What the heck happened? Samaje Perine and Luke. Oh my goodness! Now I'm calling you Lucas. This is ridiculous.
No.
We're having a meltdown live on camera. Tyler, it is now your pick. What are you gonna? I'm gonna stop talking. It's your pick.
Thank you. So I'm in a very interesting spot because Anthony Richardson is right here, and I did not expect him to make it all the way back to me, because I was kind of expecting a guy like Kirk Cousins to be here, and I would have been okay passing up on Kirk Cousins. But golly, Anthony Richardson here, him and Daniel Jones as my quarterbacks would be really, really nice. The only problem that I have though is that I realized after I took AJ Dillon that I have Christian Watson. So the odds that I'm actually going to make or have a ton of usage for AJ Dillon in my team is pretty slim. So I'm going to build out running back depth with just one more piece, and that is Khalil Herbert. Just getting the lead back for the Bears, who I have talked about, I'm slowly and creeping up on because the dog is just efficient. He gets yards. He has the situation now with the offensive line better. I'm a big fan of Khalil Herbert in the 9th. And after Khalil Herbert went to Von A-Chain and Jamal Williams, and Anthony Richardson is still there. And golly, that is really, really enticing. And can
he do it? Can he pull the trigger?
Let me explain why this is difficult for me, because based on my quarterback rankings, right, with available quarterbacks in the 3 that I'm specifically talking about, Anthony Richardson, Geno Smith, and Daniel Jones. Okay. In my quarterback rankings, I have Daniel Jones as my QB 10. I have Anthony Richardson as my QB 15, and I have Geno Smith as my quarterback 14. So do I just take my guy here, regardless of how the board is, just go get my guy? Or do I take the perceived upside that Sleeper is putting out there on their big board with Anthony Richardson? Geno Smith is out of the running because I don't. Well, actually, I have DK Metcalf. Oh, geez.
Ty, what are you gonna do?
Oh,
people, this is the mental process that we usually run through in 30 minutes, and you're getting to see Ty go through all the emotions right now.
Wow.
Taking a draft. And so, Ty, I do got to say, Daniel Jones is pretty far down. Every team now has a quarterback. A couple have 2. Do you think, Daniel Jones isn't quite projected to make it back to you here? So do you just, since that was your plan, do you just go with your guy? That is kind of the direction I feel like you might need to go.
I wonder. I mean, again, I like Anthony Richardson and I like Geno Smith because of how Geno Smith fits into my team, even though I just talked about how I wasn't really going to take him. It now makes sense if I have DK Metcalf, but I am just going to go with my guy here. Daniel Jones is a top 10 quarterback for me. Yes, I know I'm going to miss out on Richardson. I know I'm going to miss out on Geno, but I'm just going to go with the guy that I think is going to have a better season out of the 3. And it works with my team, with the Darren Waller component of my team. So that's a very tough one, and one that you just have to say, I'm going to go with my guts on this one. And I will, if you live by your guts, you're going to die by your guts. And that's just how fantasy football is. And I'm going to ride with Daniel Jones as my quarterback and my pick there.
After Daniel Jones went Rashad Penny, Odell Beckham, Dalton Kincaid, Elijah Moore, Anthony Richardson unfortunately did not continue to slide. Cortland Sutton, and it's back to me. And man, the board gets ugly right around here. There is just no one I want. Allen Lazard, Jameson Williams, who I understand people are like, oh, there's a lot of intrigue there. Dude's been dealing with a hamstring. They've been saying he hasn't looked great in camp. He's suspended 6 games. Like he hasn't had a training camp with him. I don't want anything to do with Jameson Williams right now. Jerick McKinnon, Adam Thielen, he's an interesting volume play. Chig Okonkwo, Damian Harris, Rashad Bateman. And I actually think I'm going to go Rashad Bateman. I still think Rashad Bateman is a super talented wide receiver. We just haven't seen him healthy yet. Zay Flowers is obviously, showing up to camp. Everyone thinks he looks really good. And he could definitely be the wide receiver 1. Mark Andrews is the best target. But I'm going to take Rashad Bateman here, bank it on the upside as my wide receiver 5, and just hoping that he can find a role in this Baltimore offense that is going to throw the ball a lot more than I think we've seen in the past. So I am going to take Rashad Bateman here. After Bateman goes Lazard, Geno, Jameson Williams, Jerick McKinnon, Adam Thielen, and Chig Okonkwo. And I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm just going to grab my tight end, Tyler Higbee. My favorite late round tight end. Obviously, if I get sniped with him, I go with my guy, Gerald Everett. But I do prefer Tyler Higbee. He's a guy who, over the last couple of years, has had some really high target numbers. If I'm not mistaken, it was either last year or the year before. He had 2 years ago when Stafford was healthy, he had 100 targets. Like at the tight end position, you can't ask for much more. So I think he's going to be, a very solid late round option at the tight end position. After Higbee, Cole Kmet, Sky Moore, Darnell Mooney, Tyler Boyd, Damian Harris, Elijah Mitchell, and Ty, back to you. Where do you go from here?
Well, I don't know. I know my last 2 picks are going to be a wide receiver and a quarterback because, like I said, with Daniel Jones, as much as I like him, it is definitely a gamble to really have him as your only quarterback without any insurance at all. And then a receiver because I still only have 4. And the receivers are just disgusting. I'll have to go down the board some ways to get the receiver I want. But for this pick, I am going to go with a quarterback here. I am going to go Russell. Wow. Okay. Well, I like Jared Goff, but I like Russell Wilson more. I think he has a higher ceiling than Jared Goff does. And I mean, I'll say this, Jared Goff and Jared Goff is a discount Kirk Cousins.
Yes.
And when I say discount, I don't mean like they offer the same production and he just goes later. No, I just mean like he's a Walmart version of Kirk Cousins. So I'll get Russell Wilson there as some quarterback insurance. And after Russell Wilson went Greg Dulcich and Jacoby Myers. And so I'm going to finish up with a wide receiver here. And just looking at the receivers, it's an interesting list. Rashee Rice is there, but I'm not in on Rashee Rice on having a major role this year in the Chiefs offense. Because this is I'm just going to say it. The hype on Rashee Rice is very similar to the hype that everyone was having with Sky Moore and the role that they could have. And look what happened with Sky Moore last year. So I'm not saying that Rashee Rice is a bad player, but I'm just saying I would not be surprised if they take their time in the development of Rashee Rice. So I'm going to pass him. I don't mind Romeo Doubs, but with AJ Dillon and Christian Watson, that makes 0 sense for my team. I'm just going to skip the third name on that list because I'm not going to give people the fine. It's Rondale Moore.
You wanted Rondale?
I was ready. I saw that name and I was like, ooh, I got this.
Yeah, man. I like Nico Collins. He's a little bit down the list. I like Zay Jones. Our friends over at Underdog Fantasy and Hayden Winks and the show that he does with Josh Norris. They were talking a ton about how this Jaguars offense, when they were going in 2 wide receiver sets, Zay Jones was on the field over Christian Kirk, and that is purely just because Christian Kirk is the slot wide receiver. So, not necessarily a like downgrade on Christian Kirk. It does kind of it puts a tamper on the expectations a little bit. But the guy I am going to go with here, though, is another Giants player and just get another stack potentially, is Jalen Hyatt. Okay, and I don't think Jalen Hyatt is the wide receiver 1 for this team. He's going to be a rotational wide receiver 4. Because Paris Campbell, Isaiah Hodgins, and what I will think is either Sterling Shepard or Darius Slayton will be the starters. But Jalen Hyatt by the end of the year could be one of those 3 names. And Jalen Hyatt has a cheat code that if you play off coverage on him and he's going deep, you're beat, because he's built up speed, and his top end speed is too good. And it literally happened in their game against the Panthers. He's in the slot. They're playing off coverage, and the guy just takes 2 steps towards the middle of the field and gets the safety to bite, and then he just hits it to the corner, and he's wide open. Mm-hmm. So that's a pure upside thing. And for my last pick, if this was an actual team, the odds are that Jalen Hyatt is just not going to produce the way that we expect him to or want him to. I'll just drop him for somebody else, right? Yeah. Like it's a no risk, high reward pick. And for Jalen Hyatt in the 12th, I should say. It's just, I like it with the Daniel Jones quarterback too.
For sure. After Jalen Hyatt goes Sam Laporta, Tyler Algier, Ezekiel Elliott, Devin Singletary, Rashee Rice, Bryce Young, and then I'm going to do pick of
Rondale? Oh gosh.
Yes, Rondale Moore, just to grab a little more wide receiver depth. Tank Bigsby was also, a thought there for me. Raheem Mostert, a thought there, but I'd rather just take the wide receiver and just see, hey, you know what, maybe I think it'll be quicker for us to go, hey, he's really involved or he's not, or this team, is going to be able to put up some sort of fantasy points or they're not. And so that week 1, I can drop him, grab another guy if I really need to. But that wraps up our mock draft 5.0, our last one. Tyler, you want to read us your team from the 111?
Sure thing. From the 111, I went Nick Chubb and followed that up with Tony Pollard to get 2 solid running backs. Then I went wide receivers, DK Metcalf and Keenan Allen. Then grabbed Christian Watson, Darren Waller in the 5th and 6th. Grabbed Jordan Addison and AJ Dillon 7th and 8th. 9th, Khalil Herbert, and then into the 10th, grabbed my quarterback Daniel Jones and got some insurance with Russell Wilson in the 11th, and went high upside, no risk with Jalen Hyatt in the 12th.
For sure. From the 104, I went running back Christian McCaffrey, Garrett Wilson, rookie Jahmyr Gibbs, Aaron Jones, and then I went 3 straight wide receivers with Jerry Jeudy, Christian Kirk, and Deontay Johnson. After that, I did grab my quarterback who fell to me, Deshaun Watson, Zach Charbonnet in the 9th, Rashad Bateman in the 10th, Tyler Higbee for my tight end position, and finished out my draft with Rondale Moore.
You wanted Rondale?
Oh. And I got to hit it 3 times in one episode, so I'm pretty happy about that. But yeah, that wraps it up. Obviously, leave your thoughts below. We want to hear what you guys think of our teams. We know, I do want to acknowledge, we see your comments. Can we get an 8-man? Can we get a 14-man, a 10-man? Can we see some dynasty, a keeper? The reason we just stuck with 12-man full PPR is because for the masses that it hits, it's about the middle ground. It hits for the most amount of people. And so if you've got a 10-man or a 14-man, you just kind of adapt slightly based off of, how off of this draft, obviously 8 and 16, and then it starts to get a little bit different. But for the most part, the overall way that we're constructing teams, our thoughts, they will apply for multiple teams. And, in the future, hopefully we can start bringing in some more variety of, maybe we get a keeper draft in here. Maybe we get a dynasty draft in here. But right now, this is what you get. It's great. It's great. It's going to help you out. So we hope you enjoyed it. Ty, you got anything to add to that?
If you are one of those people that likes to do in 8-man mock or 10-man or 14 or 32, whatever it is, or even Dynasty. If you want to do one of those mock drafts, Sleeper has those mock drafts ready to go. And if you want to make sure you are drafting the best team possible in those mock drafts, you should get the 2023 Fantasy Football Fellas draft guide, which is on sale right now for 50% off. So you get 240 players, stat projected, ranked, tier ranked, all of it from all three of us. So you get a consensus rank, which is a lot safer than just one person saying like, I think Nick Chubb is the running back 1 overall. You get 3 different opinions on it and you get the consensus out of it. So all you need to do to get the discounted draft guide is join our Chalkboard page. The link for that is in the description below. Again, if you want to dominate those mock drafts and dominate your drafts, get that draft guide. Again, link for that is in the bio.
For sure. Alrighty. I don't think we have anything else to say. Thank you again for tuning in, and we will see you again next week with, I think, the flag plant episode. That's a big episode for us, and we are so excited for that. But with all of that, deuces.
Deuces.
And we'll see you next week.